Golden child siblings received $350,000 from our parents while I got nothing, yet they still mock my small wedding that I paid for myself. I finally snapped at the family dinner. I, 32F, have always been the black sheep of my family. My parents adored my older sister Melissa, 35F, and younger brother Jake, 29M, from the moment they were born. They were the golden children who could do no wrong, while I was constantly criticized and made to feel like a disappointment. Growing up, Melissa and Jake got the newest clothes, the latest gadgets, and lavish birthday parties. I got hand-me-downs and was lucky if my parents even remembered my birthday. When it came time for college, my parents paid for Melissa and Jake to attend prestigious private universities. I had to take out massive student loans to attend community college and then a state school. After graduation, my parents gifted Melissa and Jake each $175,000 to use as down payments on beautiful homes in exclusive neighborhoods. I was living in a cramped studio apartment, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. When I asked my parents if they might be able to help me with a small down payment on a modest condo, they laughed and said I should have worked harder in school if I wanted their financial support. Despite the clear favoritism, I always tried to maintain a relationship with my family. I'd show up to holiday gatherings and family dinners, forcing a smile as Melissa and Jake bragged about their latest promotions or exotic vacations. My parents would beam with pride at their accomplishments while barely acknowledging my presence. Last year, I got engaged to my wonderful fiancé Alex. He comes from a working-class background like me, and we bonded over our shared experiences of having to fight for everything we have. When I announced our engagement at a family dinner, my parents and siblings could barely muster up any enthusiasm. Melissa rolled her eyes and said, "Well, I guess someone had to marry her eventually." Jake snickered and added, "Yeah, good thing she found another loser who couldn't do any better." My parents just sat there silently, not bothering to chastise them for their cruelty. I was hurt but not surprised by their reaction. Alex and I knew we'd have to pay for the entire wedding ourselves. We set a modest budget and found ways to cut costs while still creating a day that felt special to us. We decided on a backyard ceremony at my aunt's house, the only family member who's ever shown me real kindness, followed by a reception at a local community center. We spent months DIYing decorations, carefully choosing an affordable catering option, and calling in favors from talented friends to help with things like photography and music. It wasn't going to be the fairy tale wedding little girls dream about, but it would be filled with love, and that's what mattered most to us. The week before the wedding, I went to my parents' house to drop off their invitations in person, even though I was pretty sure they wouldn't come. Melissa happened to be there and asked to see the invitation. She looked it over with a smug expression before declaring, "Wow, I didn't realize it was going to be such a trashy little affair. I guess that's all you can afford though, huh?" I bit my tongue, determined not to let her ruin my excitement. "It's going to be beautiful," I said firmly. "Alex and I have put our hearts into planning a day that celebrates our love." Melissa cackled. "Oh honey, you can put lipstick on a pig but it's still a pig. I'm sure it'll be very quaint. Just don't expect any of us to actually show up to your little backyard bash." I left feeling deflated, but Alex helped me shake it off. We focused on the final details and managed to have a truly magical wedding day surrounded by friends who felt more like family than my actual relatives ever did. To my shock, my parents and siblings did end up attending the ceremony. But their presence felt more like an obligation than a genuine desire to celebrate with us. They sat stone-faced through the vows, didn't participate in any of the toasts or dances, and left almost immediately after dinner was served. The following week, we had our regular monthly family dinner at my parents' house. I was feeling good, married to the love of my life and proud of the beautiful wedding we'd managed to pull off on a shoestring budget. But apparently my family wasn't about to let me bask in that happiness for long. As we sat around the dining room table, Melissa turned to me with a wicked gleam in her eye. "So, how does it feel to be a married woman now?" I have to say, that wedding was certainly something. Jake snorted into his wine glass. "Yeah, it was something all right. Something straight out of a white trash magazine." I felt my cheeks burning as I tried to keep my composure. "I thought it was lovely," I said quietly. "Alex and I worked really hard to make it special." "Oh sweetie," Melissa cooed in a condescending tone. "Special is one word for it." I especially loved the plastic tablecloths and dollar store centerpieces. Very creative use of a tight budget. Jake chimed in, and that dress. Did you get it off the clearance rack at Goodwill? It looked like something Grandma would wear. I gripped my fork tightly, willing myself not to cry. My mother finally spoke up, but not to defend me. Now kids, there's no need to be mean. I'm sure she did the best she could with her limited resources. That's when I felt something inside me snap. Years of pent-up hurt and resentment came bubbling to the surface. I slammed my hand on the table, causing everyone to jump. You know what? I've had enough, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Yes, my wedding wasn't some over-the-top affair in a fancy ballroom. Yes, we had to be careful with our money. But you know why? Because unlike you two spoiled brats, I didn't have mommy and daddy handing me hundreds of thousands of dollars. Melissa's jaw dropped. Excuse me? I turned to my parents, years of pain evident in my eyes. You gave them each $175,000 for house down payments. You paid for their college educations, their cars, their lavish weddings. What did I get? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. My father's face turned red. Now listen here, young lady. But I was on a roll and couldn't be stopped. No, you listen. For years I've put up with the favoritism, the criticism, the constant reminders that I'm not good enough. I've smiled and played nice while you all looked down your noses at me. Well, I'm done. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. My wedding may not have been fancy, but it was filled with more love than this family has ever shown me. The people there, our real friends, they celebrated with us. They danced and laughed and cried happy tears. Meanwhile, you all sat there like you were at a funeral. Melissa tried to interject, but I held up my hand. I don't want to hear it. You've had your whole lives to tear me down. Now it's my turn to speak. I looked each of them in the eye as I continued. I may not have your money or your big houses or your prestigious careers. But I have something much more valuable, a partner who loves me unconditionally and friends who support me no matter what. I don't need your approval anymore. My mother's lips were pressed into a thin line. If that's how you really feel, perhaps it's best if you leave. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, don't worry, I'm going. And I won't be back. I'm done subjecting myself to your cruelty. I'm done feeling like I'm not enough. From now on, my life is about surrounding myself with people who actually care about me. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. As I reached for the handle, I turned back one last time. You know, I've spent my whole life wondering what I did wrong. Why you couldn't love me the way you loved them. But I finally realized, the problem was never me. It was you. And I feel sorry for you because you're missing out on knowing an amazing person. With that, I walked out and slammed the door behind me. My hands were shaking as I got into my car, but I felt lighter than I had in years. As I drove away from my childhood home for what would likely be the last time, I felt a sense of freedom wash over me. I called Alex and asked him to meet me at our favorite park. When I got there, he was waiting with open arms. I collapsed against his chest and finally let the tears flow, not tears of sadness, but of relief. As he held me close, I knew I had made the right choice. This was my family now, and it was more than enough. In the weeks that followed, I got a few guilt-tripping texts from my mother and a half-hearted apology from my father. But I stood firm in my decision to cut contact. It wasn't easy, there were moments of doubt and pain as I grieved the family I wish I'd had. But overall, I felt an incredible sense of peace. Alex and I focused on building our life together. We found a sweet little house to rent and spent weekends fixing it up, making it our own. I threw myself into my work and finally got the promotion I'd been working towards for years. We started having regular dinners with a group of close friends, creating our own little chosen family. About 6 months after that fateful dinner, I got an unexpected call from my aunt, the one who had let us use her backyard for the wedding. She told me she had terminal cancer and only a few months left to live. My heart broke at the news. She asked if I would come visit her, and of course I said yes. When I arrived at her house, I was surprised to find my parents and siblings there as well. The atmosphere was tense and awkward as we all tried to focus on my aunt. But as the day went on, I could sense my family watching me, seeing how I'd changed, how much happier and more confident I seemed. As I was getting ready to leave, my aunt pulled me aside. "I'm so proud of you," she said, squeezing my hand. "You've become such a strong, amazing woman. I know it hasn't been easy, but you did the right thing standing up for yourself. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small again." Tears welled up in my eyes as I hugged her tightly. "Thank you for always believing in me," I whispered. To my surprise, my mother approached as I was saying goodbye. She looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact as she spoke. "Your aunt is right, you know. You have grown into quite the woman. I'm sorry it took us so long to see it." I was stunned into silence. My mother had never apologized to me for anything before. She continued hesitantly, "I know we have a lot of work to do, and I understand if you're not interested in trying. But if you are, well, we'd like the chance to do better. To really get to know you and Alex." I felt a whirlwind of emotions: hope, fear, lingering anger. But as I looked at my mother's face, I saw genuine regret there for the first time. "I can't promise anything," I said carefully. "But I'm willing to take small steps. Maybe we could meet for coffee sometime, just the two of us?" She nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "I'd like that very much." As I drove home that day, I felt a mix of cautious optimism and protective skepticism. I knew rebuilding a relationship with my family, if that's even what I wanted, would be a long and difficult process. There was so much hurt to work through, so many toxic patterns to break. But I also felt stronger than ever before. I had proven to myself that I could stand up for my worth, that I didn't need their approval to be happy. Whatever happened moving forward, I knew I would be okay. I had a loving husband, true friends, and a sense of self-worth that no one could take away. That night, as Alex and I cuddled on the couch in our cozy little rental, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Our life might not be fancy or impressive by my family's standards, but it was rich in all the ways that truly mattered. I thought back to my wedding day, to the genuine joy on our friends' faces as we said our vows, to the raucous laughter during the best man's speech, to Alex's eyes shining with love as we had our first dance. In that moment, I wouldn't have traded our trashy little affair for all the expensive, Pinterest-perfect weddings in the world. As the months passed, I cautiously began to rebuild some semblance of a relationship with my parents. It was slow going, with plenty of setbacks and difficult conversations. But I could see them really trying to understand me for the first time. They even made an effort to get to know Alex, inviting us over for dinner and asking thoughtful questions about our lives. Melissa and Jake were a tougher nut to crack. They seemed resentful of the attention our parents were finally giving me, and it took a long time for them to let go of their superior attitudes. But eventually, we found a way to interact that was, if not warm, at least civil. The real turning point came about a year after that confrontational family dinner. Alex and I had been trying to start a family, and we were overjoyed to find out we were expecting. When we announced the pregnancy at a family gathering, I braced myself for snarky comments or backhanded compliments. Instead, my mother burst into tears and hugged me tightly. "I'm so happy for you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're going to be an amazing mother." My father, never one for overt displays of affection, gruffly offered his congratulations while blinking back what I could have sworn were tears. Even Melissa and Jake seemed genuinely excited about becoming an aunt and uncle. As everyone gathered around to ask questions and offer advice, I felt a sense of belonging I'd never experienced with them before. It wasn't perfect, there were still moments of tension and old wounds that needed healing. But for the first time, I felt like a true part of the family rather than an outsider looking in. That night, as Alex and I lay in bed discussing baby names, I found myself reflecting on the long, difficult journey that had brought me to this point. I thought about the scared, insecure girl I'd once been, desperate for her family's approval. I thought about the angry, hurt woman who'd finally found the courage to stand up for herself. And I thought about the person I was now, strong, confident, and surrounded by love. I placed a hand on my still flat stomach, marveling at the little life growing inside me. I made a silent promise to my unborn child: you will always know how loved and valued you are. You will never doubt your worth or feel like you're not enough. And if anyone ever tries to make you feel small, you'll have a mama bear ready to fight for you. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a profound sense of peace. The road hadn't been easy, but every struggle had led me right where I was meant to be. I was building a family of my own now, one founded on unconditional love, mutual respect, and the knowledge that true worth comes from within. My trashy little wedding had been just the beginning. It was the first step towards claiming my own happiness, on my own terms. And as I looked towards the future, with a baby on the way and a slowly healing family, I knew that the best was yet to come.